one-dimensional wave equation. Okay, because this is everything starts here. So it's very simple. So the idea is that we have a, let's say, a simple problem of, let's say you have a bar. Okay, and then you have why undo is not working. Okay, fine. And tools. Yeah, here. Let's say I have a one-dimensional bar, and at the end of it, I am applying a force as a function of time. Okay, so now let's say it's a one-dimensional elastic bar, so it will have some particular area of cross section. It will have some particular elastic modulus. Okay, it's one-dimensional problem, so Poisson's ratio is not going to be relevant here. It's not going to play much of a role here. So what happens is that I want to write the equation of motion, the force balance for this particular problem. So I can take a particular two cross sections. Let's say this is my coordinate system X. Okay, and let's say I'm looking at two cross sections at a location X and at a location X plus delta X. Okay, and we draw free body diagram for this one particular small chunk. Let me save it. Fine. So let's talk about this free body diagram of this fellow. So let's say we have this particular small element of length delta x, and let's say on the left region there is some internal force acting. Let's say F internal. Okay. On the right side there is some internal force acting. Plus there will be a some change in the internal force. So this is a simple force balance. Okay. So now, of course, the area is going to be A. So because of this, the mass of this element is going to be area times delta x is the volume into the density of this material rho. That will be the mass of this one particular small element. So now we apply force balance, that the change of force is nothing but will lead to the acceleration. So change of force is nothing but you have delta F. So you have delta F internal, that will be equal to, that will lead to acceleration of this mass. Okay, so mass is nothing but area times delta x into density times acceleration of this segment. That's going to be, acceleration is this d2u d2 square, where u is my displacement. Now, as usual, we follow the trick. So we say that these elements are very small. So we will can rewrite this as df internal dx should be equal to area into density into this acceleration. Okay, so now we have to focus on this internal force. Okay, so we know, from our first course in solid mechanics or high school physics, the internal force is nothing but used to define a quantity called as stress times area. Okay, and stress is nothing but the elastic modulus into strain, and strain we write as a gradient of displacement into area. That's my internal force. So once you plug it in here, we will get gradient of E A du dx will be equal to area into density into acceleration term. Okay, this is valid for all points in the bar. Okay, so now we assume that the material is uniform, so that elastic modulus is constant, and we assume the geometry is uniform, so the area will be a constant. Okay, so we can write this equation as E by rho d square u dx square will be equal to this d square u dt square. Okay, and this quantity e by rho, okay, this quantity e by rho is what we call as a wave speed. So we define a wave speed c such a way that is going to be a square root of e by rho. So now we can write this fellow as c square d square u by dx square and d square u dt square. So this is basically the equation of motion for the one-dimensional bar. Okay, so usually when we talk about let's say statics, okay, in static problem usually we have a bar, okay, and in the bar we have a body force acting, and then you apply a force F. This is a body force B acting. This is a classical example where classical problem where we start our finite elements for finite element methods. Okay, so here the equation of motion would be similar, but you will have another body force term, okay, which is not present in this case. Fine. Okay, so again, are there any questions till now? I can take some if there are. Okay, fine. So if there are no questions, we'll proceed further. Okay, so now the question is, when is dynamics important? Okay, when is dynamics important for a rod? Okay, of course the answer we can give a qualitative answer. Okay, so whenever we have impact, okay, that's one answer. Another answer can be whenever things are moving very fast. That is one more answer. Another answer can be, whenever some explosion happens. Okay, so all these things are qualitative description of when dynamical forces, the inertial forces are important. Okay, but how do you quantify it? Okay, so that is what we are going to do now. So in fluid mechanics, okay, maybe I don't know Harish if Harish spoke about it or not. In fluid mechanics, as you all know, we have this quantity called as a Reynolds number. Okay, RE. So this Reynolds number is, it's defined as the definition basically. It's defined as the inertial force to the viscous force. Okay, so this is what Reynolds number means. Okay, and that's something which you already know. This is for fluid mechanics, of course. Okay. Now the question is, what is the equivalent number for a solid mechanics? So if you have a pipe flow in, if you have a water flowing through a pipe, I think the Reynolds number is equal to, I think, rho times the velocity of this flow into the diameter of this pipe divided by the viscosity. Okay, for a pipe flow. This is for a pipe flow. Okay, so now the question is, what is the equivalent expression, or what is the equivalent number for solid mechanics problems? Okay, that is what is we have to find out. Okay, of course, I mean, see, solid mechanics and fluid mechanics, okay, both are same, because fluid is basically very less viscous solid, okay, and a solid is basically a more viscous fluid. I mean, both are same. So if you have something like Reynolds number in fluid mechanics, we should have some similar number in solid mechanics, which is a ratio of the inertial force. But we don't have viscous force in solids. Okay, so we will have to define a number. Let's call as an inertia number. Okay, so this is going to be the ratio of, let's say, In. Okay, it's going to be the ratio of the inertial force, of course, to the elastic force. Okay, so this is how we have to define. Okay, but the question is, what is a proper way to come up with these dimensionless parameters? Of course, you know that this Reynolds number and this inertial numbers both are dimensionless. Okay, so now you know how do you arrive at these dimensionless numbers. Okay, so we arrive at these dimensionless numbers by taking the equation of motion and by doing non-dimensional and by non-dimensionalizing it. So we take this equation of motion, we try to non-dimensionalize this, then you get the dimensionless parameters. So this is the deal. Okay. So is the problem understood now? So basically, whenever you have a fluid mechanics problem, you have a Reynolds number, which is kind of important, tells you how strong is the inertial force compared to the viscous force. The question is, how do you define a similar number for solid mechanics problem? And the way you arrive at these numbers in fluid mechanics is by using this non-dimensional arguments. So same thing we will do here as well. So what we'll do is we'll start with the equation of motion. So equation of motion is this d square u dx square. I will say small x for now is equal to 1 by c square d square u dt square. Okay, so I remind you this. So what you have is you have a length here, you have a length here, and you have a time here. Okay, so somehow we have to get rid of these dimensions. And in our problem, we saw that we have a problem where we have a bar, you apply a force F, which is a function of time. So now when you talk about dimensionless parameters, we have to be a bit more specific about the problem which we are investigating. So in the case of Reynolds number, I said Reynolds number is rho v d by nu, but that is for a particular problem. Okay. So similarly here also we have to take a particular problem and then we have to arrive at the dimensionless parameters. So in this particular problem, let us say that force is increasing with time like this, and then it remains constant. Okay. So we say the force is increasing with time over a times period of, let us say, tau. Okay. And let us say this particular bar has a length L. Okay. So now I can define some dimensionless distance. We are defining it. Dimensionless distance x and dimensionless time t. Okay. So dimensionless such that the distance x is nothing but x by L. Okay. So similarly, I can define dimensionless time t such that it's definition. It's a definition. It's going to be t by tau. Similarly, I can also define dimensionless displacement u, which is u by L. Okay, and then we plug in these three definitions into our equation of motion. Can I go full screen here? View full screen. Yeah, fine. So in this equation, I will let's copy paste. Can I do a yep, Control C, Control V. You come here. So here, if you try to plug in these terms, I think I have to do it by hand. I can't do these things. So the first fellow is I have d square d x square. What is x? X is nothing but x into L square, and here is u into L. Sorry, capital U. Okay, this will be equal to 1 by c square. Same thing, d square u into L divided by 2 times derivative of time, t into tau square. Okay, so here remember your L, your tau. Okay, they are constants. Okay, so for example here in the Reynolds number, your diameter and your velocity, they are constants. Okay, so now you can rearrange this and you can write it as, so I have L square here, so I will get a 1 by L is 1 by C. I have L here, so L, and I have a tau square here. Okay, I can bring this L upstairs. I will say L square, and let us remove this fellow. Okay, see, our U is dimensionless, X is dimensionless, so therefore this has to be no dimensionless. Okay, no dim. Okay, similarly, our capital U is dimensionless and capital T is dimensionless, so this term is also dimensionless. Okay, so if you have no dimensions on the left hand side and this fellow has no dimensions, so therefore this fellow also should not have any dimensionless. Okay, and this is what we would define as an inertia number, In. So we would define it as how can we define it? We can define it as L by C square divided by tau square. Okay, L by C square and tau square. Fine. So now here is something which is important. And what is L by C? Okay, so L by C is nothing but the time taken. Let's say if you disturb it, okay, C is the wave speed. So which means that this disturbance which you are applying here will travel from this end to this end at a speed of C. Okay, that's what the wave speed means. So basically, so when you have this L by C is the time taken to traverse the length of the rod by the elastic wave. Okay, so now it's going to be some time. Okay, let's not worry about let's not write in. Okay, this is our inertia number. Okay, so now the question is, when should we have inertia and when should we ignore it? So whenever we can say this inertia number is less than let's say 1, we ignore inertia. So which means we are going to have a static problem. Okay. But whenever when your IN is more than 1, inertia is to be considered, and then the problem becomes dynamic. Okay. So this is what I wanted to convey first. We'll see some examples, but I wanted to tell you. So like you have a Reynolds number in the fluid mechanics domain, we have something called as a inertia number. Okay. In the solid mechanics domain, unfortunately, solid mechanics is quite boring. Okay, compared to fluid mechanics. Okay, at least from a classical BTech curriculum point of view, fluid mechanics has streamlines, streak lines. You have vortices, you have sources, sinks. It is very beautiful to picturize. Okay, but solid mechanics is very boring. You draw a line, you tell it's a beam. Okay. So I mean, that is why and most of the problem in solid mechanics are static. Okay. So by the time you get to this kind of problems, you basically end the course, and then you really don't see these kind of interesting features. So now let's take an example to see what should be the tau. Okay, so that inertia is dominant. So the question is, what should be tau so that the inertia number is 1. Let's say inertia number 1 is, let's say inertia forces should be non-ignorable. Okay. So what should be the load application time so that inertia number is significant? Okay, let's look at it. So inertia number is 1. And this is, I said, L by C, right? Square by tau square. So which means your tau should be in the order of L by C. So whenever tau is equal to L by C, inertia whenever tau is equal to L by C, this implies inertia dominates. Okay, so this is something which we have to always remember. Okay, whenever you are, what is tau? Tau is the time period over which the the load is applied. This is the time over which the load is applied. Okay, and who is this fellow? This is the time taken for wave travel through the rod or bar, whatever you want to say. So this is basically a competition is going on. A competition is going on between the load application time and the wave travel time in the bar. Okay. So whenever your time taken to apply the load is larger, okay, than L by C, then ignore inertia. Okay. And whenever your time taken is, let's say, less than L by C, of course we have to include inertia. Now what should be typical time? Let us say you have a structure or a bar which is of a half-meter length. Okay, let's say your bar is typically has a length of half-meter. Okay, half-meter, and the wave speed, okay, in steel, let us say it's a bar material is steel. So in wave speed of steel is typically about 5,000 meter per second. Okay. So, you know, if you want to include inertia, if you have to include inertia, then your time should be in the order of, or let's say in the, I mean, at least larger than 0.5 by 5000. So you put a 0.5, you put a 4 there. So it's approximately 10 power minus 4 seconds. So this is about 100 microseconds. This is how fast you should apply a load. Okay, this is how fast you should apply a load, so that you know you have to include inertia. Otherwise, you can simply ignore the inertia and you can still, you know, use statics. Okay, so there are a few comments I want to make here. So one is this time. Okay, this basically the time, it depends on mode of loading. Okay, so I'm sure people who work with vibrations, they know what modes are. Okay, so when I say mode here, what I mean is like this. Okay, so let's say if I have a bar and if I apply a load here like this axially, so I am exciting axial modes. But let's say if I am taking a bar and I'm applying a load like this, so now you will not call it a bar, we will call it as a beam. Okay, so here we are exciting transverse modes, or we'll say exciting bending modes. Okay, so for axial mode is what we have seen, that the inertia number is L by C square by tau square. For the bending mode, inertia number will be different. If you can, if you have time, you can work it out. So inertia number, it will be something like this. It will be tau power 4 you will get here. No, sorry, it will still be tau square, but you will have a L power 4, and there will be some version of elastic modulus and some version of moment of inertia will be there. You work out, okay, I don't know exact thing, but it will at least be tau square will be there, and you will have length power 4 will be there. Okay, so when you try to estimate these numbers, you have to be careful. That's what I wanted to say. And typically, if you are talking about axial mode of impact, okay, the time over which the load is applied should be like about 100 microseconds. Okay, so this is something which is important. Okay, I want to give one note about this wave speed. So I said wave speed of, let's talk about wave speed of a few materials. Okay, let's say, well, let's talk about wave speed of some extreme materials. Okay, let's talk about steel. So steel wave speed is about 5000, I said. Let's talk about water. So water wave speed is, any guess how much? Someone can make a guess. Wave speed of water. Hello.
Yeah. No, nobody is. You can continue.
Let's pick some people. Nah? Anyone having birthday today? No one having birthday.
1500 meter per second.
Yeah. So
Someone
the wave
said.
speed of water is going to be about 1500 meter per second. But the next one should be even easier. What is the wave speed of air? This should be easy. You stand near a building, we shout, we get our echo, right? So that is the time taken by the sound wave to go towards the building and comes back.
Somebody is saying 340 meter per second.
Yeah, good. So the wave speed of just speak out here, okay? Because speaking alone in a room, speaking alone in a room is quite depressing sometimes. So wave speed in air is about, I said 340, right? 340 meter per second.
332, 340. There are two answers.
Yeah, give and take a few, 320, 340. Yeah, but what I wanted to tell you here is, see, steel is very stiff, okay, very dense than air, okay, and but you see, there is no big and water is also very different than steel. But you see, the wave speed in steel and water, they are not so much different. They are I would say almost same. They are in the same order of magnitude. Okay, I mean, I find this is really amazing. You have these crazily different materials, but in all these materials, the wave speed is almost the same. I mean, give and take some few numbers, okay, and out of them, factor of 10, but it's not so much different. But this material itself, they are so much different. This is something which is very interesting. Okay, I think I can take a few questions now, based upon whatever we have been discussing, and then we'll proceed to see how to solve this wave equation, so that we can get to know some standard solutions available. Just speak out. I mean, any silly question is also perfectly fine. I would like to have a few questions before I move on.
Only person who can ask you is Veer Babu, but he's not unmuting himself.
No, fine. Whatever. I mean, everyone can ask me questions. Whatever. What do you mean?
No, sir. I'm unmuted. No. No, sir. I'm learning. It's like so far I have studied this wave phenomenon in air and few parts of water. But Syed sir is teaching in solid, so just I'm going, sir. I'll ask the questions.
Okay. Just like that. I told you. Don't worry.
Anyone else? Yeah, fine. One more question, then I will start again.
So you were talking about this wave speed in solid, liquid, and air. So is there any formulation for the speed of sound in some granular kind of material?
I don't know actually. See, we can model it at different levels. Okay.
Perhaps they might be doing experiments and calculating it, right?
Yeah, true. That's what they see. For example, if you talk about sand, okay, I mean sand, we can model it assuming like continuum. Okay. So then we know the elastic modulus of a sand more or less, and the wave speed in sand by using some simple ultrasonic techniques. Okay, so in that case, it's going to be the same. Okay, but if you're talking about, let's say, a dispersed granular medium, okay, then it's not even a continuum anymore. They are discrete particles.
Right.
Okay, so whatever I have been discussing here is only for the continuum material, where there's no discreteness. Okay, but the moment you have discreteness, then you will have loss of contact. Okay, I mean, then it's not a continuum anymore. We have to solve the full problem. And we have to use something like this discrete element method or atomistic simulations to do those things.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Next time I don't want questions from you. I want from participants. Yeah, fine. Okay, good. Let's try to learn how to solve these equations, there is a very elementary method which is called as a method of characteristics. Okay, so to learn this method of characteristics for this for a regular wave equation, okay, so before we are going to solve the wave equation, I think it's better if we have one look at a problem. It's the problem of advection equation. Okay, we will start with the advection equation and then we'll go to the wave equation because they are similar problems, and advection is far simpler than wave equation. So let's. I'm not going to talk about all derivation of this method and all. I'm just going to show how it works and how to use it. Okay, that is, I think, more important than derivation. So if we talk about advection equation, so when you have advection equation, what it means is like this. So let's say you have a pipe, and in this pipe some water is flowing at a velocity v. Okay, and let us say this particular region of water, okay, let's say this particular region of water is at a higher temperature. Let's say temperature here is like this 0, and but
your slide is not visible.
Not visible.
Yeah. Whereas
present.
No.
Okay, how about now? Is my screen visible?
No, sir.
No, I have shared it here. I will say stop sharing. I will say open share tray. Desktop application, share. Okay, how about now?
Yes, sir, visible.
Visible, good. Fine. Okay, now visible? Okay, good. Fine. Let's say, okay, I'll start again then. Let's say we have a pipe in which, some water is flowing, okay, and the water is flowing at a velocity v. Okay, so that's fine. But now let's say on top of this flow, there is a temperature distribution. And let's say temperature distribution is like this. In this particular region, the temperature is slightly higher than elsewhere. So this is the temperature distribution. Okay, so this is, let's say temperature. Now I will put red color. Yeah, chalo. This is temperature distribution. So in this local region, we have some higher temperature compared to other locations. Okay, so now let's say this is at time t equal to 0. Okay, but now what will happen after some time? Let's say after some time, let's say time is equal to t1. What will happen is that water is flowing. Okay, I am saying the water is flowing. There is no heat conduction. Okay, that is fine. We'll assume only water is. So what will happen is that this profile will go to a new location. Okay, so this curve, this profile initially was here. Okay, this is the temperature profile at time t equal to 0, and this is the temperature profile at time t equal to t1. Okay, this has happened because the water is flowing with the velocity v. So the distance, this is the coordinate x here. So the distance by which this particular pattern, okay, or you can say the disturbance, the speed at which the particular disturbance is traveling is v. Okay, so v is the speed of water. This is also the speed of disturbance travel. Okay, so that in a time between 0 to t1, this disturbance has traveled by an amount v times t1. Okay, after some time more, the disturbance will travel more and so on. Okay, this is what happens in a simple pipe flow where you have some heated water locally. Okay, this should be pretty much straightforward. So now let us try to visualize this from a graphical in a graphical way. So what I can do is I can draw my coordinate x here, and I can have my time axis like this. Okay, and this is my time t equal to 0. And let's say this is some time t equal to t1. Okay, so I said that at time t equal to 0, the disturbance is at some location. Okay, so disturbance is some location. So what is it? The disturbance is somewhere here. This is the thermal profile. Okay, at time t equal to t1, this disturbance has traveled by some amount. Okay, to the right, because velocity is positive. So this disturbance will move forward in space at a speed v. Okay, so this fellow will go from, let's say here, the disturbance might go to this location like this. Okay, so the disturbance at time t1 is there, and it has traveled by some amount v into t1. Okay, fine. So now here is the interesting point. So what is the let's say this, what is the value of the temperature here? It is this value. And what is the value of the temperature? This particular disturbance has moved to a new location here. Okay, and this particular disturbance has, sorry, here at time t1, na? This point has moved to this location. Now what you can do is you can have these lines. Not so clean. Let me try to draw a straight line if possible. Okay, and that is not bad. This line is going to, no, I will not straighten it. So let's say this disturbance is traveling from here to there. Okay, so you have these lines, okay, along which the disturbance travels, okay, with the uniform velocity. So what I'm trying to say is that along this line, okay, the value of temperature remains same. So along this line, so along these lines, the value of temperature, let's say theta is temperature, is constant. Okay, and this line is what we call as a characteristic line.
Syed?
Yeah.
Sorry, this is Jayaprakash here from IIT Gandhinagar. So just had a quick question. Maybe my mic was muted. We had an issue. From the previous description, you spoke about the similarity between fluid mechanics and solid mechanics, and said we do have something called an inertia number.
Yeah,
that's interesting. Interesting to point out. But whenever you talk about this continuum systems, and you do have an excitation of the kind that you spoke about, it in fact excites every mode of that particular bar problem. And each one of them has a certain eigenvalue and a corresponding characteristic frequency corresponding to its frequency, its natural frequency.
Yes.
So then how can we in fact say that for a certain type of loading, you can consider it to be static problem or a dynamic problem? How do you characterize that? Because you excite all the modes in this case, isn't it?
Yes. Okay.
So when we say that 10 power minus 4 seconds is a certain characteristic time, if you are applying the load for a larger time period, you don't have to consider the inertia effect. And if it is lower than this particular time period of application of load, you need to consider it dynamic. I couldn't clearly understand how you made this distinction here.
Yeah, okay, fine. See, this 10 power minus 4 number, I said, okay, it's just like a Reynolds number, okay? So Reynolds number, we say that transition happens at about 1000. Okay, some things interesting happens, okay? So here here what we say is, whenever you have this number more than, okay, see, okay, Jayaprakash, see this, the way you see this entire thing is derived, okay, this has nothing to do with the what you call this has nothing to do with the eigenmodes and all. Okay. Okay. So for a given geometry and given loading, you get this inertia number. Okay, so here I am saying, you know, L by C is a characteristic, you know, mode of vibration. Okay, so if you look at what is the if you, okay, one more thing is when you talk about vibrations. So what is the first mode of vibration in a typical bar problem? In a typical bar problem, the first mode is basically you have a node here and the other fellow will vibrate up and down, right? In a sinusoidal fashion. Okay, so how do you get this particular phenomenon? Okay, so what happens is basically you start pulling this end. Okay, a wave travels, and then, you know, there are multiple reflections happening up and down. Okay, so what this inertia number is telling us is basically how many reflections are happening compared to what is the load application time. Okay, so this in principle has nothing to even do with the modes of vibration. Modes of vibration is basically comes after we solve the system of equation. This is, I believe, is a more fundamental thing. I'll tell you, if you want me to relate it to fluid mechanics, let us say if you have a simple lid-driven cavity problem. Okay, so in a lid-driven cavity problem, we can still have a Reynolds number defined in a similar fashion, where V is the velocity of the lid and D is the size of the cavity. Okay, but you know, depending upon the Reynolds number which you have, you can have either a single vortex or you have a multiple vortex or the location of a vortex, whatever you have. Okay, so I see a similar analogy here. So if you talk about so if you have a initial number which is, let's say, for a given initial number, it is possible that you can excite, you know, one or more of the eigenmodes. That is perfectly fine. Okay, but I'm sure whatever I have said would not have convinced you, because I am myself not convinced.
Don't worry.
No, because I am myself.
That's perfectly fine. I don't understand.
No, that's
no.
true.
I know. Yeah. I found it interesting that you brought in this particular what do you call analogy between a Reynolds number, because in solid mechanics we do, or in dynamics to be precise, we do not have anything like a non-dimensional numbers.
No, we do have, you know, I mean, if you, yeah, no, we do. We just, you know, put x is equal to 1, you know, t is equal to 1, we say always.
No, I mean, I'm saying in the sense of in fluid mechanics and heat transfer, there are hundreds of non-dimensional numbers, Grashof number, Prandtl number, Nusselt number. We don't have that variety here. Perfectly fine. So the second question was about the problem that you're talking about, showing the characteristics. I was just curious, you showed a certain rectangular pulse, and after a certain time duration and a spatial position, you show the same profile. What characterizes that the profile is intact? How do we check that, or how do we verify that it's the profile is intact as it was?
Correct. In this particular problem, okay, what are the possibilities? Okay, the possibility is that this profile can become diffuse like this. Okay, so when you say diffusion happens, basically, we are talking about heat conduction. Okay, so heat conduction is a mechanism which I'm completely eliminating here, which I'm ignoring here. Okay, so because I can ignore the heat conduction, so here we have pure convection of the fluid, and because of this profile is intact. Think about, as if you have a fluid and you have this bunch of dots sitting. This particular fluid is basically dyed out in some green color. Okay, and I'm tracking this coloredness. Okay, I'm talking about I'm tracking this coloredness of the fluid. So initially the color is somewhere here, and then the color is going to a new location, and then the color is going to a new location. So what is happening is the color is not being smoothened out or diffused out. Okay, that is because of it's a completely different phenomenon, because of the if you have a color, it's going to be a diffusion of chemical species. If it's heat, it's going to be a heat conduction.
Oh, sure. Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, fine. So what I was telling is along these lines, okay, along these lines, the temperature is going to be constant, okay, and these lines are what we call as a characteristic line. Okay, so for now, if I have an example, let us say I am applying temperature as a function of time on a boundary of a fluid. Let's say I have a pipe. Let's say I have a pipe, and fluid is entering here, and here I have a heater. Okay, the heater is giving temperature to this fluid. Okay, let's say, I mean, it just gives it according to this particular law, so that the temperature at x equal to 0, that is the starting point, is going to behave like this. This is, let's say, T1. This is time axis. Okay, and still the fluid is moving to the right with the velocity v. So now the question is, what happens? So we can still use the same idea of characteristics. So I can say that this is my x coordinate, that's my temporal coordinate, and this is my x equal to 0 axis. So at x equal to 0, I'm applying a temperature until a time of t1. Okay, until the time of t1 of magnitude theta equal to, let's say, theta naught. This until time of t1, I'm applying here temperature theta is equal to theta naught. So now what will happen at different times? So that is the question. So what will happen is, each particle will move to right with a particular speed v, because of which we would get characteristic line along which temperature is 0. Initially, let's say temperature theta equal to 0. And so we can, at each and every point in space, okay, we can have characteristic lines. So for example, this particular point will lead to a characteristic line which goes like this, and this slope of this line would be V inverse. Okay, so which means the temperature here is 0, and the temperature throughout this line is going to be 0 forever. So if we talk about this particular these 2 points, okay, one at a time. So this point will lead to a characteristic line which goes like this, and this point will lead to a characteristic line which goes like this. Okay, so this whole region, okay, corresponds to temperature theta equal to 0. Sorry, theta equal to theta naught. So which means this entire band, okay, this entire band will be having a temperature theta equal to theta naught. So now if I ask what is the temperature profile at any given time, let us say here at time t equal, let's say this T2 which is greater than T1. So temperature profile will be 0 until I hit this particular point, and then temperature will be theta naught, and then temperature again will be 0. So at this particular temperature at time t equal to T2, I can have a temperature profile to be 0, then temperature, then it becomes 0, and then continue again. Okay, so this profile basically keeps on moving forward in time. Okay, this is about how to solve advection equation using this graphical approach. I can take some questions if there are, and then we will move to the wave equation. I will give about 30 seconds. Okay, fine. So let's move forward. So in an advection problem, what happens is that you have a, okay, let's summarize what is advection. So in an advection problem, summary on the advection problem. Okay. What happened? No. Something happened. Just a minute. I will open up again. Oh dear. No. Ah, okay, got it. I think it crashed. Fine. So we'll in the summary of advection. So what I was saying is at every x and t, at every point in the space-time domain, okay, there is a line along which the temperature is constant. Okay, so now here we have to focus on few aspects. So we say that at every x and t, there is a line along which something is constant. Okay, so now for wave equation, same thing holds. Okay, we just have to rewrite this in a slightly manner. Okay, for wave equation, I will just write it in here. At every x and t, there is, instead of is, there are two lines. okay, along which in the advection problem theta is constant, but for the wave equation something else is constant. Because there are two lines, so there should be two constants. Okay, so this is the difference between advection and the wave equation problems. Okay, in advection you have only one characteristic line, but here you have in the wave equation you have a two characteristic line. Okay, that is what it is. So let's see how it goes about. So let's say I have a problem 1D bar. So let's take a particular example. Let's take a particular example of a 1D bar for which you apply a velocity on an end. So let's say you have a 1D bar. Initially it is stress-free and stationary. Okay. So initially at time t equal to 0, the stress equal to 0 and velocity equal to 0. Then on the boundary, what we will do is we will try to apply velocity at time at x 0 comma t is v naught for t is greater than 0. Okay, so let's see what happens in this case. So let's have this xt plane here. So I have, this is time axis, that is my space axis, that's my bar. I am saying for every at x equal to 0, I am applying velocity. V is v naught. Okay. So when we compare to the advection problem, at every point in space, okay, I said we have two characteristic lines coming up. So one characteristic line will go to the left and another characteristic line will go to the right and left. Okay. So now what will happen? So now what will happen is that this line has a slope. Well, slope is on this side. C inverse. Okay. And this has a slope C inverse. Okay. So in advection problem, what happens is that your information is flowing to the right, okay, because of the flow of water. Okay, that's what happened here. But in a wave propagation problem, any information at any location will flow on either sides of the bar. Okay, so if you have a rod, if you give a small disturbance, the disturbance will propagate to the left as well as to the right. So disturbance will propagate at the wave speed c. Okay, and that's what this C inverse is. Okay. So now the question is, and along these lines, okay, in the advection problem, the temperature was constant. Okay. Now the question is, what is constant along these two lines? Okay. So what is constant along these two lines? So along these two lines, the quantity which is constant along this line is a quantity which we will call as alpha, and that is equal to V minus C epsilon. V is the velocity and C is the wave speed, epsilon is the strain. And along this line, let's say line number 1 and line number 2, let's say is O. Okay, along this line 2, O2, the quantity which is constant is what we have as beta, and that will be equal to V plus C epsilon. Okay. So at each and every point in space, you have these two quantities. Okay. So let us check for some trivial things. Okay. What happens? That is what we will do now. Okay. So what I'm trying to tell you is that each and every point in space-time domain, there are two characteristic lines. Okay. Which have a slope of C inverse. So which means information is traveling from this point in either directions. Okay. And forward in time. That is one. And along these lines, certain quantities are constant. Okay, these are what we call as alpha and beta, or which are nothing but V plus C epsilon and V minus C epsilon. Okay, so this velocity and wave speed, wave speed, and the so what is constant? So this combination of velocity, wave speed, and strain. These combinations are constants. Along the characteristic lines. Okay, so this is what I want you to understand. Okay, I will give it about some. I'll give a minute. You think about it, and then we'll move further. Okay, fine. So we'll proceed further. Let's start something which is very trivial. Okay. So when I say, okay, let's say I want to find the, let me just copy paste it to the next page, or I can insert a new page here. Oh, what has happened? Okay, now I have space, right? Fine, let us take one example now. So let's say I want to find the velocity and strain at this particular point. Okay, so what I mean is this particular point, it has a particular x and t. Okay, I want to find what is the velocity at this particular spatial position and at this particular time. I also want to find out what is the strain at this particular spatial position and at this particular time. Okay, that's what I have to find out. I want to find out. So what I can do is, I can draw a characteristic line to this point from somewhere here so that the slopes are maintained. Okay, so now I want to find out what is the velocity and strain at this particular point. So what is happening? Let's name these points. Let's say this is the point number 3. This is point number 4, and this is point number 5. So what is happening at point number 3 and point number 4? Okay, at point number 3, we have, that is the time t equal to 0. At this particular time, the velocity is 0 and the rod is initially stress free, which means the strain is also 0. Okay, So along this line, what I have, along this line, I have my V minus C epsilon is some constant, alpha I said. Okay. So along 3 phi. Okay. So how do I find alpha? I can find alpha by evaluating this expression at this point. Okay. So which means, so we can evaluate, so find alpha by evaluating this fellow at the point number 3. So which means what will happen at point 3, my V equal to 0 and strain equal to 0. So therefore, this 0 minus C into 0 will be equal to alpha. So therefore, alpha equal to 0. So therefore, my alpha equal to 0 along this line. So along the line 3 phi, we have the condition that V minus C epsilon is a constant, and that constant is 0. Okay. So similarly, I can find out what is my beta for this line phi 4. Okay. So at the point 4, again, my velocity and my strain are 0. So if the velocity and strain are 0, then automatically my beta will also be equal to 0. So therefore, my V plus C epsilon equal to 0 along 4 phi. Okay. So now this is a situation that I have a space-time domain. This is point number 3. This is point number 4. And this fellow is point number 5. Okay. So along this line, I have V minus C epsilon is 0. And along this line, I have V plus C epsilon is 0. Okay. So therefore, at this point, both these conditions should be satisfied. So at point 5, V plus C epsilon should be equal to 0. Also, V minus C epsilon has to be equal to 0. So this basically implies that at point 5, V should be equal to 0 and strain should be equal to 0. Okay, that's a trivial statement, but that's how it works out. Okay, so I'll just wait for a couple of minutes so that you grasp it, and then we'll move forward. Why can't I zoom something intermediate? I can. Okay, Fine. I think I'll wait for another half a minute, then we'll proceed. Am I still online? Yeah, I guess so. Fine. Okay, so we'll proceed now. So let's consider the problem where you are applying velocity on the left boundary. So which means along this whole line, you are applying, let's say your velocity is v naught. So now I know velocity, but I want to find the strain here. Okay. So how do you find strain along this boundary where you're applying the velocity? Let us try to find it out. So what happens is that I want to find something on the boundary, the strain here. So I want to find something here. So what we'll do is we'll again take this characteristics and we'll take it there. Okay. So along this line again, I will have this condition that v plus c epsilon is 0. Okay. And along this line, we will have v minus c epsilon, some other constant, let us say alpha 1. Okay. So at this point number, let us say 3, 5, 6. Okay. So at the point 6, my v plus c epsilon is 0 and my v minus c epsilon is my alpha 1. Okay. So now in this equation, what we know and what we don't know. At 6, I know that velocity is v naught. Okay. And I don't know my strain and I don't know my alpha 1. Okay. So I have two equations. And I have two unknowns. So now we can find out what is my epsilon dot. So epsilon. So my strain is simply minus v naught by c, and my alpha 1 is minus, I think, 2v naught. Yeah. Okay. So what this is telling me is that when you are applying a velocity positive, so which means you are having a bar, okay, and you are applying a velocity at this point. Okay. So if you're applying a velocity at this point, so then your v naught, then your strain is minus v naught by c, which means your strain is going to be compressive because you are moving to the right, you are compressing this bar. Okay. And it's just, strain is proportional to velocity. That is interesting. Usually in our regular solid mechanics, the strain is proportional to displacement. Okay. But here is not the case. It is proportional to the velocity. So that is another interesting feature. So let's try to find out what is the stress caused by it. Okay, the stress which is caused by it is elastic modulus into strain. So elastic modulus is elastic modulus. Strain is minus v naught. Wave speed is root e by rho. Okay, and this is something which we can write as minus rho C V naught. Okay, so let's try to find out what typically it means. Okay, let us say that you have a bar. Okay, and there's a falling weight on it, and it is dropping, and I want to find out the velocity. Sorry, I want to find the stress in this bar. Okay, no, let's not. This is a transient problem. This is okay. No, let's make it even simpler. Okay, see, when I move my hand very fast, okay, I cannot move my hand more than a speed of 5 meters per second. Okay, that is what I typically can do. So this is something you can do some basic calculations. You can take some high-speed images using your phone, and you can find out typically you can't go more than 10 meters per second. Okay, and let's say you hold this bar and you move this fellow at the speed of 10 meters per second. So what happens? So what will be the stress which you are generating there? So stress which you are generating there is going to be minus rho. Let's say it's a steel bar. Okay, steel is about 7,800 meters per second. Let's say it's about 10,000 approximately. Density is 10,004. Wave speed C is about 5,000. Velocity is going to be about 10 meters per second. I said 10. So it's minus 500 megapascals. Okay, so this is the stress which you typically apply when you hit a bar. Okay, another interesting thing is no matter a bar is of a smaller area of cross section, of a larger area of cross section, the moment you apply this velocity you will get this stress. Okay, no matter what. That is another interesting thing. So what I was trying to tell you is that if you have a bar, if you apply a velocity to it, the stress you will generate is 500 meters per second, 500 MPa. Okay, and it's given by rho C V naught. Okay, let us see how it propagates in time. Any questions till now? Okay, I mean, I'll take some questions, then we will see how it propagates in time.
Very interesting concept, Syed.
Yeah, I hope so. See, the point is not point is the problem. My problem is Ashok. I am quite bad in mathematics here. Okay, so all this PD, all this PD, VD. Okay, it is just goes above my head. Okay, that is why that's the only reason why I become computational guy to begin with.
Okay.
Okay, no PDs. Even if PD is there, you use FEA. Done.
I think you are putting it in a very like physical significance of all these concepts. You are putting it in a very, very interesting way.
Yeah. So this thing is purely graphical. Okay, no PDs and all. Yeah. It takes time, of course. Okay, I mean you have to be very careful, but it's okay. It's worth it.
Sir, here you applied that velocity, right? Is it like are we moving the rod as like a rigid body, or we are applying the excitation as like in terms of velocity on the rod?
I am applying velocity to that one particular point of the rod. Okay.
Okay.
Now you are asking me what is happening to rest of the rod, right? That is what I will talk next. Okay, I am saying, so here I spoke about that particular point, and at this particular point the velocity is applied, and at this particular point, because of the velocity being applied, you are getting this particular stress. Okay, I haven't spoken to you about what is happening to the rest of the rod. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Fine. Let's start now. So let's come back to the same characteristic. I'll copy and paste it. Now, do I have space for it? Yeah, I can copy and paste. Okay, this is not necessary, so I will remove it out. I'll remove what is not necessary now. Okay. I'll remove all these things. This also we know. I think we'll remove it for now. We'll bring it back if needed later. Okay, let it be. I'm not able to erase it. Fine. Now let's see what happens. So I said at each and every point in space, we have a characteristic. Okay. So I said from this point, you start characteristics like this. So we can also start a characteristics from this point. Okay. And what I said is at this particular point, this, okay, let's just go back to, so this particular point, we found the stress or the strain is V naught by C at this point, and velocity is V naught. Okay. Now you can ask the question, what happens to, let's say, some point here? Okay. See, there's no difference between this point, let's say this is point number 6 and point number 7, because you know the characteristic here is going to be this and this. So along this line we have the condition that alpha plus, sorry, u plus not u, v plus c epsilon is 0. Even here also we have the same condition. Okay, but on a different line. So therefore, so we have this characteristic starting from here and here. So on this characteristics, I had that u v minus c epsilon is what? 2v naught, huh? 2v naught. 2v naught. Okay, so on this characteristic also, I will have v minus c epsilon is 2v naught. Okay, so now we would like to find out what is the velocity of this particular point. 6, 7, let's say 8. So you see what we are doing, we know a particular solution before, okay, and we are trying to build up the other solutions from our history of what we know. Okay, so this is what we would like to call it sometimes as a forward propagation kind of stuff. Okay, this concept is very famous in gas dynamics kind of areas as well, but let's not go there. So what is happening at 8? Okay, 8 is being intersected by line, let us say this is 3, 6 and this 7, 8. Okay, so along this line 7, 8, I have the condition that v minus c epsilon is 2v naught, and along this line 8, 6, I have the condition that v plus c epsilon is 0. Remember, this is v plus c epsilon is 0 line. So therefore, along 8, at this point 8, both these conditions have to be true. So at 8, I can evaluate my V to be V0 and my strain to be minus V0 by C. Yeah, minus V0 by C. Okay. So at 8, the strain is this, and this is what is happening at 8. Okay. So now let us talk about some point here. Okay. How can you find out the velocity and strain at this point? Again, build up lines. So you have one line coming like this and another line coming like this. Okay. So this line is nothing but same, and this line is nothing but V plus C epsilon is 0. Okay. So what I am trying to tell you is, in this entire region, okay, so in the entire region, we have a situation so that the velocity is V0 and strain is minus V0 by C. Okay. So basically you have end of the bar. You are disturbing the end of the bar by applying a velocity V0. And what is propagating into the bar? Into the bar also only V0 is getting propagated. Okay. So if you want to ask what is happening to the bar at each and every point in time, okay, at time t equal to 0, let's plot time t equal to 0. That's my coordinate. Okay, so there is no velocity, no strain, perfectly fine. At time, let's say t equal to, let's say, c into t1. No, mistake. T1. Okay, so the at time t equal to c t1. So let us say that t1 is somewhere here. Let me just redo it and draw. Let me just redraw it and redo it so that you know it's clear what is happening. So let's say this is 2 lines. That is my x, and that is my time. On this boundary, I am applying the velocity, and you have a characteristic line, which is v. This characteristic line, and in this entire region, I have my velocity is v0, and my strain is v0 by c, negative. Okay. So at any point, let's say time t equal to t1. Okay. So you have velocity which is positive, then 0, and then 0 again. This is the velocity. And strain is negative. 0 again. So this is strain which is minus v0 by c. And this is my velocity which is v0. This is at time t equal to t1. If I look at some other time, say t is equal to t2, so it's going to look like this. So the velocity is going to be v0 till this end. And my strain is going to be minus v0 by c and then 0. So what is happening is this velocity which you are applying here, it is being propagated to the right, okay, at a speed of c. So this wave is propagating to the right with a wave speed c. Okay. So now let us see. Fine, that's what is happening. So what is in simple terms I will tell you, or let's say summary. So let's say you have a bar, and you apply a initial velocity v0 at the end of it, at time t equal to t1, this region c into t1. Okay, then at time t equal to t2, we will have a larger length which is at the same velocity, and the length of the bar which has the velocity will be equal to c into t2. So what you have is basically you have a velocity discontinuity in the bar. Okay, so that is something which is happening. Now let us give you some example, some numbers. Okay, how different these two distance can be. So let us say if that my t1 minus t2 is 1 second, then this distance is going to be about 5 kilometers. 5,000 meters. That's a wave speed. Okay, so that's why these things happen over a very short time intervals. Okay, so let us say if you are talking about let us say 1 microsecond, okay, then this distance would be 1 millimeter. Okay, these are very fast events happening. So the wave equation is basically interesting thing. Okay, wave equation is basically it has two kinds of solutions. One is the vibration kind of solutions where you have a gross movement up and down. Okay, but the wave equation also admits these kinds of discontinuous solutions as well. Okay, I can take some questions and then I will move forward. Ashok, how much time I have? Half an hour?
If you want, you can take, but
how much
to the time,
can you give me?
10. You can take as long as you want. I don't know.
Maybe
like 15 minutes.
Okay, fine. Yeah,
is it okay?
Yeah, fine.
Okay.
Now let us say I do something similar to what I have done for the water problem. Okay, I want to apply this velocity v0 only for a short period of time, and then I want to make the velocity 0 again. Okay, go to next page, please. So what I will do is something similar. So at this is my time, let us say. This is my velocity at x equal to 0. I want to apply something like this. Okay, so v0 and then 0. So what will happen now? In the xt plane, we will have something like this. xt, and let's say I am stopping this at the time of tau. So until time t equal to tau, I am applying a velocity, then I am applying 0 velocity. So because of this, we will have distinct characteristic lines which propagate. Okay. So now earlier, so in this whole triangle, we had the situation that velocity is v0 and strain is minus v0 by c. But now those features will be constrained only to this region. Okay, so in this region, we will have velocity is v0 and strain is minus v0 by c. Okay, So now if I look at different time instances, the velocity would be something like this. Velocity will be 0, then some velocity v0, then becoming 0 again. And then at some other time here, the velocity is 0 till here, then velocity is v0, then velocity becomes 0 and then 0 again. And the distance traveled is nothing but, let's say this is t2, this is t1. The distance traveled is c times t2 minus t1. Okay, so this pulse is traveling along the length of the bar. Okay, this velocity pulse along with the strain pulse, okay, they are 1 to 1. So these fellows are traveling to the right. Okay, so let us say if I have a pulse and let us say I terminate this rod at the end of it, what will happen to this pulse? Okay, that is what we are going to see now. So let us see what happens now. So let's say I have a rod, and this is the short region, okay, for which my velocity is v0 and my strain is minus v0 by c. Okay, and let us say this is my x coordinate and this is my time. It's a very bad time. Almost. Oh yeah, give me a straight line. Chalo. This is my time axis. And on this line, let us say it's going to be a free boundary, okay, stress-free boundary. So on this, let's say this is the end of the rod, okay, this is going to be x is equal to L, x equal to 0 somewhere there. So on this x equal to L, my strain will vanish. Because the free boundary, stress has to be 0, so strain has to be 0, no other option. Okay, so now what happens? So we start from this point. We have a characteristic line which goes like this. And we also will have a characteristic line which goes like this. Can I move these fellows? Undo if I do. Let's say, okay, let's Control Y. Let's assume that this is the point. Okay, so along this line, I have to find out my alpha value. So what is my alpha value? So along this line, let's say 0, 1. So along 0, 1, I have my V minus C epsilon is alpha. So V is V0 minus C epsilon is minus V0 by C. This is going to be 2V0. Am I right? Yeah. So along this line, I will have a condition that V minus C epsilon is 2V0. Okay. And I know the condition on this point. On this point, my strain will vanish. Okay. But what about the velocity? We need to find it out. So how do you find out? So we need to know what is the condition along this line. Along this line, I have 1 and 2. This is V plus C epsilon is some beta. Okay. So on this point 1, I have two conditions. Can I have more space here? Let me check. So on this point 1, I have a condition that V plus C epsilon is beta, and I have this V minus C epsilon is 2V0. So epsilon is going to be vanishing, because by definition or by the boundary condition. Okay, so beta has to be V, which is equal to 2V naught. So this beta will become V naught. Okay, and the velocity at this point 1 is velocity at this point 1 is 2V naught. So this is very interesting. What is interesting is that you have a velocity pulse which is coming and hitting this boundary. When the pulse hits the boundary, the velocity actually doubles. Okay, so that is something which is very interesting. So now you would like to know, okay, what is happening to the to this point. Let's say after the pulse has gone to the free boundary, has reflected back. Okay, what is happening to, what is the condition at this point? Okay, condition at this point is, so along this line, okay, we would have V minus C epsilon is 0, and along this line we have V plus C epsilon is 2V naught. So along this point 2, we would have V minus C epsilon is 0 and V plus 2 epsilon is 2V naught. So therefore, my velocity at point number 2 is V naught, and my strain at point number 2 will be V naught by C. Okay. So what has happened is this wave is going from this to the free boundary and coming back. At the free boundary, my stress is 0, strain is 0, and velocity has doubled. Okay. But when this wave comes back at the same point, the velocity is still the same. So velocity with which the wave is going forward and velocity with which the wave is coming backward, the velocity is still the same. Okay. But you see the strain direction is reversed. So strain is negative before, but strain is tensile here, positive. Okay. So which means at a free boundary, okay, if you hit a compressive wave on a free boundary, it will become tensile. So on the contrary, or similarly, if you hit a tensile wave on the free boundary, it will become compressive. Okay, so we can do a similar analysis. What happens if you have a velocity fixed boundary condition? Okay, so well, we can have multiple things, but I think Ashoka will stop here because we don't have time.
Okay, Syed.